All right, so calling the Cable and Broadband Internet Commission meeting to order. Let's see, first order of business, call. They are, let's see, as far as who's here, roll call, so
Jeff Abrams.
Rob Capone.
Luis Rodriguez.
And Suzanne Woodland, Deputy City Manager and Regulatory Counsel.
All right, so first order of business then is electing a chair.
I liked Rob.
Okay, motion, we'll take that as a motion by Jeff
I'll
to
second that.
nominate,
Yeah, I'll
All right.
second that.
Rob,
Okay, sure.
seconded by Lawrence.
All in favor?
Aye.
Right. I'm gonna abstain, but yeah,
Okay,
passes. Okay, cool.
yep,
Happy to serve in any capacity, so yeah. All right, next, approval of the minutes from our June 6th meeting.
Yeah.
Everybody have a chance to read the minutes, any issues or what they?
Yeah, I make a motion to approve.
okay, motion by Lewis.
Second,
Okay,
all in favor?
Yep.
Aye.
Aye.
okay.
Great guns. All right, so next item.
Yeah.
Update on PPM TV.
So just as a kind of reminder and table setting, and then if you want more information, we can talk about it. Which is, as you may recall, in the fall of last year, PPM TV approached the Portsmouth City Council and asked the city council to reconsider the amount of funding that they get to support PPM TV. The city council declined to change the policy at that time. As you know, we've had a reval, and the city council did not want to kind of make any decisions related to changing the amount that they would receive in the fall until we kind of had they had a better handle on what the budget situation was going to look like. What they did agree to do is basically to advance the money that they would typically distribute to PPM TV through the trust. So at the meeting, the city council voted that the next Comcast payment that came in, 48,000 of that, because that's what PPM TV said they needed to get through the fiscal year, could be distributed to PPM TV early.
2025 or 2024?
For their budget for 2024, 25, because they budget on the July 1st cycle
Oh,
as
it's
well.
not fiscal, okay.
So they were looking for 48,000 to carry them through. And that's what the city council agreed to do. So not give them more money so much as recognizing that there would be at least 100,000 that would wind up in the trust if it were done in the usual course of how the money is collected and then passed to the trust. That they could give that amount in advance, and that did happen. So I think it was November, October, November, when we got the next franchise fee payment from Comcast, and we pulled the 48,000 out of that to provide to PPM TV. And that's where that stood. So when we get right now under the current policy, again, policy hasn't changed. So right now, any amount over 360,000 that we receive for the franchise fee payment, the excess would go automatically to the trust. Right now, what's going to go to the trust at the end of the fourth payment is going to be less, because it's going to be
diminishing.
less that 48,000
Right,
that they got kind of early, if you will.
right, but isn't it gonna be diminishing also down the road? Because
Yes.
there's gonna be less.
Correct, that's what
Right.
we've been seeing, and
They know
that's,
this?
yes,
Yes.
this, they
Are
have
they
been
aware of
provided
this?
with all of the trend information and the past history.
Good.
And they have been working on fundraising and kind of reviewing their model for achieving their needs, meeting their needs financially. I anticipate that PPM TV will be back before the city council at some point during this budget discussion process to talk to them about whether, you know, to change the policy and asking again. So that's kind of where things stand. And I just, as we start to gear up for the budget, if you didn't go to the city council meeting or didn't see the city council meeting from Tuesday night, the budget guidance that we were given from the city council was the target is 2.9% increase. Which actually doesn't leave a lot of extra room for, you know, adjustment. Given inflation and everything else we've seen, and you could certainly watch the city council meeting, and I'm sure there'll probably be an article soon online about the budget guidance that was given. So we're at the very beginning of the process. On the other hand, you know, there's gonna be I'm sure an ask from PPM TV and a hard conversation about whether there's room in this budget that we're trying to keep as tight as we can. So just so you're up to speed on where that stands, and I'll try and remember to keep you guys updated. So if PPM TV is going to appear before the city council, I'll try and shoot an email out and flag it. And if you have any interest in, you know, weighing in or hearing anything from PPM TV, just let me know and I'd be happy to, you know, ask them to come talk to you. So it really is up to you. Ultimately, it's a city council decision, but if you would like to get more information or weigh in any way, I'm happy to set something up. So totally your call. So.
Has there been any, again, I know this is probably way too early, but any discussion at all about, because I know at the same time, you know, PPM TV just went into new space.
Correct.
But at the same time, and this was from the city council meeting where they first went to the city council, PPM TV went to the city council because I decided I would go. WSCA showed up as well and said, hey, you know, if there is kind of, I think the plug was, and again, this is my own impression, it's not what was actually said. So if what I say is off the truth, then go to the video. But the feeling I got was that part of the reason that WSCA was there was that, like, hey, we don't get any money from the city right now. If they're gonna get more, can we get some too? I guess I'm sort of wondering is there been any discussion about perhaps some sort of co-locating or perhaps even some sort of merger between the two? Because WSCA right now has, their space is not desirable to them. And I think it's roof leaks, there's been other issues that I won't go, like, as I remember, it might be wrong, so I'm not gonna detail them, but has there been any discussion?
There certainly was discussion, encouraged by city staff to fully explore what, if any, you know, collaboration between the two might be useful, co-location. Ultimately, that was not, they couldn't find a path forward together. And so they remain separate entities. I do believe WSCA's space may have had improvements. There's been a change of ownership
Okay,
in the building that they're in over the last year.
okay,
So there may have been some improvements. I don't know. I don't have any update from them in terms of their satisfaction or not. But I believe there were some improvements to
okay.
the building from the new owner. Yeah, I think those are questions that, you know, the city council may ask if PPM TV comes back before them to say, you know.
Even obviously, they're two separate entities, you can automatically assume they're going to amicably come together, so.
Right, or find the right synergy of space.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or the division of funds.
yeah, yep. Yeah, so that's, I just thought you should be aware. Anything else?
Any questions? All right. So we'll move on to the next item, appointing representative to the Public Access Financial Advisory Committee.
So Ash has been the main designee, and I think one of you was the fallback. Oh, Gary was the fallback. Yeah, they in the event of Ash's unavailability, knowing Ash has been traveling or not as available as he used to be. So right now, you could just continue with the appointments as is, but if you wanted to reconsider those appointments, generally that committee would not meet until May. So we've got some time, but I figured I would raise it now so that people could look ahead to their schedules, their interest, and just have it on our radar screen, is Ash willing to continue to serve?
How often do they meet?
Just once a year.
Okay.
So, like I said, no action needed
How-
tonight, but I just
How long
wanted
is the
to
meeting, I assume since it's a once a year meeting, it's.
hour and a
Okay,
half.
not bad.
Yeah, usually it's the budget, PPMTV's budget is provided in advance. And then there's an opportunity to come in and ask questions of the PPMTV executive director and whoever the director brings, the board president, and kind of understand.
Yeah, we can discuss that, I'd say, when it gets closer to that time, we can even
Okay.
maybe just as a committee discuss anything, if there is things that we want to bring, we'd have to discuss it as a committee at that
Yep.
time, we could discuss who would be
Yep.
able to go, so
Right.
we'll probably just figure that out as the
Yeah.
time comes, just keep it in the back of our mind.
And I will, I'll ping Ash to see what he's thinking, whether he even has an interest in continuing to serve in that capacity or not.
Okay.
But like I
Yeah,
said, I
if
didn't want to
he's-
lose track of that, so I figure if I got it on an agenda and we kind of put it in our headspace, we remember to make sure.
What little space there is.
But, and yeah, I assume that now that we have the franchise agreement in place, I mean, we're not meeting on as regular a basis, but I would
No.
assume that we're gonna have a meeting before May, so maybe
Yeah.
something to
Yep.
think about. Saying like, okay, yeah, but obviously, we can cross that bridge. When we come to it. All right, I'm happy to table it.
Yeah, but how much in advance, so not knowing anything about really what's discussed other than like budgetary things, and
Yeah.
as you discussed, PPMTV and other public access type things are gonna be discussed. Is their agenda released, like, would we be able to get a copy of that agenda how much in advance? Cause like, would it be where that gets released, we schedule a meeting? And then, or is like, would there be enough times?
Right, yeah, do you get paperwork ahead of time so that you can prep?
Yes,
I'd say as soon as they get like an agenda.
the
that-
agenda is usually very like 2 items.
Oh,
Like
okay.
review the budget.
But-
Oh, okay.
as
Yeah,
far as
that's
when-
it.
When the paperwork, like, obviously,
Yeah.
when the homework is
Yeah.
ready, about what kind of lead time do they usually have for that? Like a week, we talking a month?
I would say normally it's maybe a week or 2.
Right.
In part because it's not very detailed. It's
yeah,
a couple of
was hoping
pages.
for more details, so I could be like, oh, okay, that's good, let's talk about, and we could discuss these things, but if it's kind of just, they're gonna be talking about.
I can show you
Yeah.
the budgets from
I can,
last year. They're
that's what
like,
I was just gonna
a
say.
page and a
maybe I'll
half,
look
2
see if I can
pages.
Find the last year's
Okay.
meeting and just see what types of things to
Yeah.
discuss and what types of details and what types of things we
Yeah.
may be interested in discussing, and then we can go from there, but, okay.
Would that paperwork be available online as far as
um,
budget items? And
I don't know off the top of my head. I'm trying to think whether it would have gotten posted.
I'm just thinking,
But I know
okay,
I have.
can we do our work or we? do we
Oh,
need
no,
to
I
do
can
that?
just
Okay. Yeah,
send
if you
you,
don't
it's
mind,
not hard.
Why don't we?
Yeah, if you can send it, that'd be great.
That way you can see what it looks like.
Yeah, and just
Yeah.
have an idea
Yeah.
of the specifics, so I can,
Right, if you don't-
Yeah.
if you don't
as right
mind.
now, I have no interest in it.
Right, and last year frankly was a little more complicated because they were in that somewhat crisis mode of we may not have enough money. Here are some scenarios, we're thinking about moving different places, so
Yeah,
it was a little more complicated for them. And it'll be interesting to see, how they see their fundraising and other ways of, bringing in revenue, how that has changed frankly since, prior years. So,
Right, so we good?
Oh, yeah,
All right.
I'm real agreeable today.
Well, then let's keep on going. All
um,
right.
so I wanted to just give you an update on communications received from various residents, which kind of rolls into other business that you guys may or may not be interested in kind of thinking about. So over the course of, I'd say the last 6 months, which is it's been about 6 months since we've met. I fielded couple of calls and issues with various Comcast customers who needed some assistance of one type or another, technical or billing, got them to executive care. As far as I've heard, and I did hear back from some folks, all those issues got resolved to the
Awesome.
satisfaction of the residents. The other communication that came in recently from a resident, was back to cell phone coverage. And so that is kind of my question for you, with regard to other business, whether, depending on how much energy and time you want to devote, thoughts, whether you want to go back to looking at that issue. So that is kind of one item I had under other business to see, what are you hearing? Coverage has seemed a little better in my own journeys around town. To various areas where it used to be more problematic, but I think there are still areas out there. So I didn't know if you wanted me for the next meeting to kind of gather up some of that earlier work we kind of talked about in terms of how we might examine or look at that. But I figured before I do anything, I would see what your preferences were in terms of anything you wanted to tackle. So there's that one issue. The other piece of communication, although it's not from a resident, is that there's a large pool of money, that BEAD money for getting high speed, relatively high speed internet to mostly rural areas of the state, so underserved areas. There is, at least right now, showing that there are some areas, potentially small pockets, like a couple of residences here and there, where there might actually not be a good alternative, and Comcast doesn't serve them. And so right now, Comcast is chasing down those addresses to see if there's a possibility of using some of that money to the extent we have any business, and it includes businesses and not just residents. Whether there might be ability to extend infrastructure in a couple of places that might only have, say, the Fidium. Or maybe they only even have like First Light if they're a business. So there is like I said, I've seen a list of 52 addresses. There's some duplicates in there, but they're chasing those down, because if they could get money, if they are verifiable, once we do all the vetting, they're gonna apply to see if they can get money to, grab those other little pieces that are out there possibly. And the city would do a letter of support for, extension for those couple of
That's a federal.
pieces. Yeah, it was federal money that is now being administered by, I forget which state agency, but so it's passed through and down. So,
Where are the addresses looking?
um,
Intrigued.
yeah, I was too. And again, this is like really baseline, like,
Yeah,
like
no,
it hasn't
just,
been vetted at all.
Right,
A number of the addresses were actually out at the Peace Trade Port,
okay.
where I know they have First Light.
Right.
And they may even have something, I think they also have the Fidium.
Mhm.
So those might not be eligible if they've already got two providers out there. And then there were a few scattered addresses, like literally scattered, which we're trying to chase down and see whether it's just, maybe they're new buildings, and so actually there is already service, but because they've been readdressed or they've been condoed, that there may be a reason why they're not showing as potentially already being served by Comcast, so that's what's being chased down. Because I've looked at the addresses, you know, just where they are on the map, and I'm like, no, I know that there's service, Comcast service in that area, you
Right.
know, just based on, you know, who's got what out in the neighborhood. So that's why most of the 51 locations, addresses that they found may actually not truth out as
Yeah,
not having a,
eligible.
yeah, but we'll see. But just so you know, that's the other kind of piece, is just double checking, because if there is the possibility that we've got some other places that would like an option,
Right.
we should give it to them if Comcast is gonna get money to build a, you know, small shtick of infrastructure. So there's that, and that's kind of what I have on kind of my update to you all, and then I'll take whatever direction or interest you have. And we could talk about how to move it forward. So,
So sorry, okay, all right, sorry, notes and everything, ready to go. All right, so I joined, you know, basically my whole reason for joining the committee was
Yep.
based on the cell phone coverage, was trying to get it on, and we had to get through the Comcast stuff, so I've been just kind of holding on this long time.
Very patient.
Yeah, during that time though, I've become pretty deflated and discouraged in anything. Basically, I think there was attempts by the city or the town of Rye to put up a cell phone tower that the residents shot down. You know, basically, we could do all this work, we can speak with the, you know, with the cell phone providers. The only thing that's gonna fix this is gonna be an expanded infrastructure.
Right.
The only question, is it so that every cell phone tower has to be approved by, I guess it has to be approved by city council or something like that, and there would be chance for public comment, basically. It goes through the same process that probably happened in Rye.
There is some local oversight, yes, and approvals that are generally required. It is more difficult nowadays to get new towers put up. However, there are some, depending on where you site them and the need, there are some elements of the law that kind of work in favor of deployment of new cell towers. But there is still a local element, and I could get someone to brief you more on that. Where we have seen more deployment, I think, are in the small, what do you call them, the little 5G infrastructure,
Yeah.
you know,
Boxes that you put on
boxes on the
buildings
poles,
and
yeah,
stuff,
and
yeah.
buildings. And I've been kind of interested, I haven't looked at it because I haven't had time to see, are we seeing more of that deployment around here to help with some of the coverage issues? Like, for example, when we have events in Prescott Park, you know, I know that Verizon at least was trying to deploy more infrastructure out there so that when there are events and there's that big,
So,
Draw.
I mean, are they bringing in temporary cell towers, or are they looking to?
I think they've done both.
Okay.
I think they have, where they can get approvals and permission, they've put up some infrastructure. And in cases where they haven't, they've also, I think, done some temporary. But I think that's certainly a question for follow-up. I know that when we have had issues, we reach out to the carriers and look at something that can be added to the building and which we can approve to help with coverage. And that's how we've done that, and maybe that's part of the conversation about how do we get that, how do we communicate that to maybe businesses where they're in an area where the coverage is not great. And maybe there's a way to talk about, well, you know, if this area is not good and your customers are being affected, maybe it rises to the level that they might deploy some additional infrastructure if you give approval, you know? I haven't pursued that much, but I think that is an option I recall sort of
Mm.
talking about with the companies, as a way to kind of bridge the gap between the large cell tower and ways to boost the signal in certain locations, so.
So I guess as far as, you know, like, it's obviously something I think we should pursue. Like I said, it's weird, cause yeah, it's like the deployment of those little
Yeah.
boxes everywhere, nobody says anything about it, but as soon as you call it a 5G tower, everybody's got, you know, it seems like. You know, the one in Rye, I guess, was outside the school or something, which was a major proponent from why it
It's
got
tough.
shot down.
Yeah.
But again, nobody says anything about deployment of boxes and stuff like that. One thing I would want to do probably is like a step one for this. At some point, I think, you know, we discussed multiple times some sort of questionnaire to go out to the public to get public input.
Yep.
Before that, I think it would just be good to get a letter drafted. And I can write something up and send it to you and you can deploy it, we can talk about it, we'll just get like a from everybody. Basically just a letter, just, you know, small letter. This is what we're experiencing in Portsmouth. Many of our residents, or we also noticed that there, you know, are lapses in coverage in many different areas. What information do you have? Like the coverage map that they have online is just, you know,
Yeah.
they just,
It's pretty general.
so if they
Yeah, I
have.
mean, they don't- it's
They
like-
probably have data because they're out deploying stuff, so they probably have taken measurements around town.
But they're not gonna, yeah, admittedly, no carrier is gonna admit that, yeah, our coverage stinks in these locations. I mean, that's dirty laundry. They're not gonna share dirty laundry.
Well, so I'd like to see what they say, to be like, what, you know, and they can, you know, be as general as possible. Oh, you know, we are deploying stuff, you know, basically like, where do you guys see coverage issues? What plans do you have currently for future, and then, you know, we can also follow it up with. Our goal is to help
Yeah,
facilitate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, in any way that we can, but I wanna see what they have to say for themselves.
Mhm.
And then maybe send out a questionnaire, and then, you know, those two things are probably not gonna match necessarily.
Yeah.
And so when staff, with pick one of you, maybe when we talked with Verizon, or maybe someone couldn't make it actually that day. You know, we didn't do it in a public meeting.
Okay.
Because it was just a staff, you know, connecting and trying to resolve some local problems. And we set some kind of boundaries. This information is not public information,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
But here, so you can understand what we know.
Yep.
And then there was this piece you can talk about publicly, getting to Lewis's point that, you know, there are some competitive pieces and technology pieces that they would not want to discuss in a public meeting, but they might be willing to discuss their intended, you know, what they foresee for infrastructure improvements and increased reliability, more generally speaking, in a public meeting. So I think there is sometimes, kind of like we did with the Comcast negotiations, there are, you know, different pieces that you can discuss in a public meeting, and other pieces that if we have the right statutory references and feels like it fits the criteria, we can move into non-public session and talk about confidential commercial information to the extent we need to, and then, you know, find those boundaries. So I think one can ask, and then we can see what we get.
Yeah.
To add some fodder to what Louis is talking about. This poll about the library, they sent to all the residents. Do you realize this has library?
Okay, that
flash
one,
vote.
got it, the flash vote. Got it.
Flash vote?
Thank you, yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
I think if you sent something about. The
That's a
flash vote,
great
I
idea.
tell you,
That is.
you're gonna hear a lot of things you're not hearing here.
Well, but if we can somehow voice it too, like, I guess my concern is, okay, all of this information we get is completely anecdotal. Unless we can get some sort of more concrete information, like if you can tell us, it's not really helpful to say, yeah, you know, I have problems with my cell. All right, who's your carrier? where are you having problems?
Yeah.
What, what was going on there at the time? Like, okay, yeah, if you're over at Prescott
Right.
Park during a concert, there's very likely, a lot of people don't understand the technology. You're not gonna necessarily have good connection, not because the signal's bad, but
Yeah.
because everybody's using
Saturated.
it.
Yeah.
Yes. So like, I don't know how we can go about how we can go about finding where these holes are. Is there any chance we could potentially do it on our own? Like, I just don't know that that's
Yeah. I know
viable.
I think we kind of toyed with this idea a little bit when we had Stephanie Secord with us.
Right.
So let me do this. Now that I know that you're interested in looking at this further, let me pull our prior work product. And let me talk to our Director of Communications. And for our next meeting, we'll kind of look at, is there a way to gather something that's useful? And maybe it's a combination of things, sometimes the plus side of something like Flashvote is it becomes informative. And it tells you where to go look for more information.
It could be a good idea.
Did you know that? Da, 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 da. Like there are options within that. So
Right.
let me, if you wanna kind of consider this, then let me go ahead. Well, when we'll schedule our next meeting and I'll pull some of the prior work product, because I thought we were getting closer. Before, we kind of ramped up and needed to deal with the
Right.
Comcast contract. And let me talk to our Director of Communications and see what he thinks. And I'll also reach out to our economic development person who works with all the businesses.
Okay.
Because that might be an avenue as well when you think about it. Businesses might have more of an interest in, say, filling out a more lengthy, like, hey, do your customers, have issues using their phones while they're in your shop, and like we might be able to kind of suss that out a little differently.
I mean, because we never know. Like, I
Right.
guess the thing too is just I like the fact of getting the information out, because I think in a lot of cases, like just to sort of go off on a little bit of a tangent, my son has worked previously at Wallace Sands,
Mhm.
and people are constantly coming up to them saying, "Hey, what's the Wi-Fi password?" Like, we have no Wi-Fi. But they're asking because the cell coverage sucks
Mhm.
out there, because
Yep.
you're far from things and there's no towers.
Yeah.
But it may be a situation where people are just sucking it up because they're like, there's nothing I can do about this. Whereas if they know that, or if we let them know, hey, this is something that we're trying to work with the
Yep.
carriers
Trying to
on,
gather
Yep.
information.
might be able to get a lot more information, and that's why I think it's a
We
great
can't guarantee
idea.
anything,
Yep.
but.
But
Yep.
I mean, there may be a lot of chaff that we gotta
Yeah.
sift through, but
Yeah.
Right,
I'm
right,
okay
right.
to try that.
Yeah.
And it just an addendum.
Yeah.
You said, update on communications received from residents that seem to be diminishing. And I know the internet is faceless. There's a lot of wackies out there, wackadoodles. But on the Nextdoor app, which is a neighborhood app, it's a common problem with Comcast. And they're telling people how to cut the cord, go to Fidium. I've not had any problem with this.
Yep.
Also on my Facebook neighborhood page
Yep.
for the neighborhood.
Yep.
It's an issue. That's why I
Is
think
it mostly billing or is it
no
quality?
quality, and some billing, but mostly quality.
If there's any way for you to kind
I
of
could print
summarize
a
those?
trail. I mean, this.
Yeah, which neighborhood is it?
It's called the Nextdoor app.
Well, I know that,
It's-
which
yeah.
neighborhood?
Frank Jones off of Woodbury Ave.
Okay, let me pass that information on.
Yeah.
Because
And some
sometimes-
people are very detailed about how,
Yeah.
this is what I did, this is what I did, this
Yep.
is what I did.
Yeah,
And it
find
was-
stores with specific stuff, like print them out and bring them in, or shoot them to us, and that's some.
Yeah, I'm happy to grab those because sometimes, particularly if you've got a whole, a neighborhood, a couple of streets. If I can provide that information to Comcast, sometimes that's kind of puts it on their radar that they need to actually deploy some additional infrastructure in that neighborhood.
The problem
So-
with Nextdoor is that it is sort of organized sort of loosely by,
That's what I
So,
found.
I mean, the
I
problem is
know,
that they
that's
don't
what I'm
have.
saying, you have
specific-
to consider the source is
but-
faceless.
Right, because it's absolutely faceless, and that I don't even know, because I'm part, but I I don't monitor it regularly, and perhaps I'm thinking that's why I have a
Yeah.
note for myself, like,
Yeah.
I think I'll start monitoring more
Yeah.
regularly, because you mentioned it before, and I need to just sort of apply myself to this one.
Yeah.
But it's sometimes difficult to know where they're from, but at the very least, what we could potentially do is be a little more proactive and say, hey, if you're having an issue and you're a Portsmouth resident,
That's
would it be
it.
possible to, you know,
Shoot me an email.
contact, yeah,
Shoot me
shoot
an
an email too, and if you're
Yep.
okay with us giving them
Yep.
out either your,
Yep.
yeah, the email
Yep.
address.
Right, if
and
you
say-
haven't gotten service, you
Yeah.
know,
Right,
or we send them to the city, the webpage.
okay.
We
I'm just
can
trying
look
to say that, you know, like,
Yeah.
okay, right, get sent to a webpage, depending on.
Oh, then they might not.
Sometimes,
Yeah,
well, not only that, but the feeling I get too is that sometimes you've got a very broad range of tolerance and skill level
yeah,
and technical savvy
Yep.
Right.
that may not necessarily,
Yep.
that may be too much of a hurdle for them
Yep.
to make that next step and find the link.
Yep.
Whereas if we can provide them with a direct,
Right.
say, okay, email here.
right. You know what, we are moving, so how about you, next week, I think it is, next Wednesday, we are moving to .gov email addresses.
You know, what's gonna happen, by the way?
So
So if you go to the old addresses, is it gonna forward you to the new address?
for a period of time, yes.
Okay,
So maybe before
Well,
you put anything
yeah.
on next door, why don't we wait until we make that transition? The other thing is maybe I can have the IT folks make a special mailbox
Yeah.
for the
that would be-
Cable and Internet Broadband Commission,
Okay,
so that, and then I would have access to it,
right,
right,
and maybe, you know, other administrative staff, just to keep an eye on it. That might be the thing to do, is I will let you know when we move over, because we'll be communicating with everyone and,
right.
my
Yeah.
first step, I think, will be like, just
Yeah.
keep an eye on it, and if
Yeah.
I think, as far as my intention, I think at this point will be, I'll monitor it, if I see
Yeah.
anything, I'll flag it, let you know,
yeah,
and either give
'Cause I
you a
can call.
screenshot.
Yeah.
Or whatever, just, so I
Yep.
won't, it'll be a passive thing, but
Yeah.
I'll then at that point redirect your attention to it for the
Yep.
short term, and let's see what happens, like,
yeah,
again, cause I don't, to be honest, most of the time, they send out an email notification, I think a couple times a day, saying, oh yeah, this is a notice, and more often than not, I'm deleting it just cause I've just got way too much junk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if it's something that's like, you're seeing these things, then I
Right.
think it's worth us, you know, me.
You can
Yeah.
bookmark it. You can say, that's all, I don't wanna hear anything else on this. You can just filter it.
Yeah.
What you wanna listen to and what you don't want.
yeah. But I'm more than happy to pass those on and kind of.
Yeah.
Be
But I think
the,
we got, first thing is
Right.
catching them, so being,
right,
I'm happy to be a trap to. catch.
finding the street address
Right,
or something, at least the
at least some
street.
sort of contact info, yeah, to
Yeah.
start.
Because we knew for a while that the Woodlands was having a lot of issues, and we had to kind of push and send the reports. Nope. There's, whatever you've done, not enough. There's still some residents, you know, with tiling. And then they finally went out and got the truck and put some more infrastructure up, so. Yeah. So happy to push those on and bring it to their attention. You
Good.
know, it's like so much else. You just need to bring it up.
Mhm.
Sure.
All right, so since we have no participants,
Yep.
so I think, are we done with?
Yep.
The business, so,
Meeting dates,
yep, okay,
see what works. I know Gary is supposed to be back end of February.
so I will actually not be around the last week of February.
Yep.
Oh, that's the only time I'm available.
We can have the meeting without me.
Beginning of March should work fine for me. We want to do that.
March 5th.
I'm okay with the fifth.
It's Wednesday, March 5th. Yep,
It
that
is.
looks fine. And 4 PM works.
14 works.
Great. I will let you know if Ash or Gary have an issue. You get to make your motion to adjourn and you're done in an hour.
Yeah, baby.
So, yeah, motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Stop recording, up there.